Thank you. Today we'll be covering drives. In this session, overall, we're going to be focusing on the features and roles of drives and its connectors. It also is going to include how to install and troubleshoot hard drives. Overall, by the end of this session, we want to be able to describe the types and characteristics of these storage devices, compare and contrast the various connection interfaces within these drives, and the purpose and characteristics. Explain what RAID is, and no, it's not the roach re- repellent. This is an actual type of technology. Anyone know what RAID is if you actually read? Please explain to me what RAID stands for. Okay.
It's redundant array inexpensive drives or independent drives.
Yes, they are expensive. I would agree. Uh, but some of these things are also software based, but the ones that are hardware based, where they have a hardware controller, I would have agreed those are the nice ones. Those are the ones that go are hot swappable and all that stuff. We'll get into the details of that. Thank you. Describe the purposes for installing storage devices. Identify the common problems we're going to have and how to solve them. Drives are data storage devices used to record and hold to process information. Anybody can tell me the multiple types of drives that are out there?
Hard drive,
Mm-hmm.
SSD
External
drive,
drives.
Mm-hmm.
USB.
flash drive.
Right? There's a plethora of them out there. We need to understand. Also, there's tape drive that we're going to be going into, zip drives. Within all these type of, there is a set of connectors that we need to recognize, which is the IDE, the SATA, the eSATA for those that are external. All in all, when it is internal or whatever device you have the new technology, which we stated a moment ago, which is RAID. It's a data storage technology that allows us to combine several physical disks to mimic either one single unit and or redundancy for performance, depending if you want just performance or just redundancy or both, depending how you like it. It is critical to follow a series of steps when installing devices, and otherwise, obviously, it's going to either damage the unit itself, erase what's in there if we do it improperly and we didn't want to. Either which way, we need to adhere. So what do we need for this? We need to be able to have customer focus and understand exactly what the customer is asking us, and ensure that they're getting exactly what they want. Growth mindset and the purpose of all these drives that we see here. We see some drives themselves that are becoming obsolete and no longer being used. In the old motherboard, still we have IDE. The majority of these devices that are coming out now, the majority are SATA. But we still, for this, we need to learn both. Got to learn. So what are drives? Kevin, help me out here. If you can read the Kevin. Is Kevin here? Nicole, please help.
I can't really speak out loud right now.
Oh, okay, not a problem. Sorry about that. I didn't know. Sorry. Hope you feel better. Arturo, it's third time's a charm.
all right. Um, Drives are data storage devices used to record, hold, and or process information. A device that only holds information is a recording medium. Devices that process information are data storage equipment. The most common devices are optical drives and hard drives.
That is correct. Anyone knows what's the difference between an optical drive and a hard drive? What they look like,
Hard,
at least.
hard drive has disks, no?
Well, yeah, hard drives are a cylinder disk inside of it, What's the optical drive though? Do you know which one's that one? Hopefully you recognize
Optical
those.
drives are those that are CDs, DVDs, Blu-rays, those shiny ones that
Yeah,
are removable.
exactly. So those are the ones that allow you to basically bring in storage. Some of these optical drives allow you to actually write information onto there, so you could actually do backups and stuff like that. Depending on the optical drive, it could be read only, but at the same time, you can bring in data from another place into these optical drives. The hard drives are physically usually inside and are meant to be long term to be used to boot up operating systems and or other partitions that may be in there for long term storage of just files instead of the actual operating system itself. Anyone know what's the other types of drives that might be out there that are like hard drives? Very similar. They obviously use them as hard drives. There you could fit them under the definition of a hard drive per se, not the size or its anatomy, but we use them as hard drives. Anyone?
Solid state drives, SSDs.
Correct. There's one more one that I'm also looking for. Thank you. That is one key one, and that's in PCs. Anyone know what's inside your iPad? The new iPads. The old iPads used to have solid state drives. I would have to agree with you in that one. There is one more, which is the eMMC, Embedded Memory. Oh, I forgot the acronym, but it is a chip. It's an embedded memory module controller. There we go.
Multimedia.
Uh, if you guys are, oh, I'm sorry, multimedia. No, eMMC has in reference to some type of solid state drives now that are inside your actual iPads, in your phones. Those are not SSDs per se. They're called eMMCs. I believe it's embedded memory module controllers. We'll get to the acronyms now. Questions, doubts. So those are the two main ones, though. Those are the ones that are common. So when in here, we'll see we have the CDs, your DVDs, as someone said, your Blu-rays. You have your hard drives per se. The first one, which is the old ones, the HDDs. Those are your ones that require magnetic head with writing, and we'll see those also with all the mechanical parts. You have your solid state drives, which have no moving parts at all. It's similar to your flash drive that you have for external. They use that technology, but now it is obviously just like a USB, non-volatile. It's not the type of memory like your RAM, which is volatile at the moment that you lose power to this device, it loses its information. In this case, no, it is long term. You have also your hybrid drives, which is the actual SSDs with the HD in intertwined with each other. Usually those are used in most of these common ones that are coming out now because of the fact that you'll put maybe the operating system on the SSD portion of this hybrid drive, and then your long-term folders in the HDD itself where the files are. So like that, your applications, everything that's housed on this SSD itself, it is able to run at the performance as an SSD, and you get obviously a cheaper model instead of wasting all that money on an SSD drive with all that stuff. If you can get the cheaper model, which is the hybrid, you save in cost. Next, you have the tape drives themselves. Anyone recognize the tape drives that are out there and what it's for?
I would think for storage of very large amounts of information that doesn't need to be accessed very often because they are slower, I think.
That is correct. There is used usually for all of your servers. You're going to see a tape drive there. And the reason why is because it's long-term storage. We're going to learn, I believe, in the 1002 chapters, which we consider the incremental backups, the full backups, and the differential backups. At the same time, with that said, those different types of backups need to be housed, and usually you'll have about if depending the organization, it could be only seven, but at least in my previous ones with the Fortune 500s like UPS, Maximus, I've also worked with Cable and Wireless. All these companies have at least 30 days of tapes of backups. I just said that 30 days. And usually those tapes are in a fireproof filing cabinet so that if anything happens, you have backup. Questions, doubts on the types of drives and their purpose. So you have your different optical drives. You have your CDR and your RWs. Capacity is 700 versus obviously the rate itself is 150. There's read rate. Anybody want to explain to me what R and RW means?
R
Read
means
and
only
rewritable?
read.
Read and
Mhm.
rewrite.
That is correct. Only the ones that said read and rewrite would allow you to actually write on it. Doesn't matter if your CD allows it. If the actual device doesn't say that it's capable of doing it, you have the DVD or the CD that does it, but it won't work. Make sense? Because the device itself, the optical drive, doesn't have the capabilities except for read if it says CDR. Questions or doubts on the different types? I could read everything here, but I do not want to waste your time. You understand the most important part is this RRW, the variance of the DVD versus the DVD plus, which is the double-sided and the single-sided, and the Blu-ray, the same thing over here. The read and write. Questions, doubts?
I don't
Mhm.
really understand how the double layer works.
You can write on both sides of the CD instead of only one side.
Okay, but what I'm interested in, there are those double layer, double side. So,
Okay, double-sided, sorry, and double-layered. The double-layered means that it actually can write, if correct me if I'm wrong, guys, like in two layers inside that CD when it's writing.
Yes, there's two different.
Right.
They use two different frequencies of lasers, and they go deeper in
Mm-hmm.
the disk, so they're able
Mm-hmm.
to write two layers on one side. Then you flip over, and you have two more layers on the other side.
Mm-hmm. That's what it means by that.
okay, thank you.
Okay, not a problem. Your HDD. Michael, help me out here.
Hard disk drive HDD anatomy. Platters or individual disks where data is stored sequentially in tracks, sectors, and cylinders to keep it organized. Spindle keeps platters in position and rotates them as required. Two right heads service each platter using read-write arms. Actuator is a small motor that takes instructions from drive circuit board.
Thank you. As we see here in the actual diagram, they gave us the information of the actual device. You'll notice on the left side, we can start with the IDE port. We'll notice also that there is a jumper block and the actual Molex connector. Overall, in here you have the actuator, which is a motor, you can say per se, that connects to the actuator axis. Yes, what you can consider as your elbow arm, right? The actual actuator arm is the one that comes out. You have your heads, which is attached to these arms. You can consider it as the little hands that can actually read and write Braille, if you want to think about it in any other way. It will magnetically write to this disc on each side. In the middle, you have a spindle, just like the word spindle means, it spins. So that therefore, that is where your record player, you could say, rotates on. That's the one that controls the speed overall. The platter itself is where it gets written onto. If you notice on the right side, you can see that there is a track, just like in your record player, there is tracks or lines that come out. I'm not sure if anyone knows what a record player is. This is exactly the same thing, or in your DVDs, you've seen it that it comes out. Same thing. There is then a part of this track, this circle per se, which is called one sector, this little part, a sector of that track. We will get into the details of sectors and all that stuff and partitions, I believe, in 1002, so don't worry too much, but that's just so you can understand what a sector physically is or a track. Any questions on any of these parts, which should be recognized? Anyone know what's also here on itself, where these drive circuit board, anyone know where it is? What's a circuit board? Can anybody give me an example of a circuit board?
Motherboard.
Thank you. Therefore, this device has, you can say, considerable, I'm sorry, you can consider it its own little mini motherboard. It's a circuit board per se, has its information here connected to the interface where the IDE is. So I'm not saying this is a computer itself. You just need to understand that a circuit board, just like a motherboard is a circuit board, this has a circuit board to be able to control the arms, to be able to control the actual read and write. Everything that's in there is controlled by this circuit board, which receives all the commands through the IDE port.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So this IDE connector port, like you said, it receives the commands. It receives the commands from the computer, the motherboard, right?
Mm-hmm. That is correct.
Okay. But now I have a question about this picture on the right. So this track that you're showing here. So basically, if you all the other tracks would be like concentric circles going in and out from this one that's highlighted, right?
Agreed.
Okay.
So that's why the disc is able to have that arm that comes in and out, just like the old record players, or just like your DVD. If you look at it, the actual layer is able. I'm sorry, the laser is able to control itself to go from both sides of this circle, all the way up to the middle, all the way up to the external.
Just to clarify, the cylinder just holds the platters, correct?
You mean the spindle?
I thought the cylinders where they stored the platters in the disc. Or I had that mixed up.
I believe if you're talking about cylinders per se, that would be several sectors. If I'm understanding your question correctly, I believe that's where cylinders are. I'm not sure, because this is a track.
Platters on top of stacked on top of each other.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. That makes
Okay.
sense.
So you have one platter, and then when you set up multiple platters, you have a cylinder.
Especially in the old days, they used to have like three, or sorry, if it said it had 5 or 6 cylinders, it would physically have that. So some of them they could just do it. I don't know how in the world they do it, if it's digitally or what, but they don't require all these different heads and or cylinders physically. The ones that are here usually, though, those cylinders, like you said, that I'm aware of, is several sectors into one, but I could be wrong or misunderstood. Is that what we were talking about or no? Hello?
What Kelly mentioned, yeah, earlier.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure. Any other questions on this? All right. Inside the drive, if somebody can tell me who's this little doohickey back here. Hello.
Is that the actuator?
You want to confirm that or? Okay. Next. What's this guy?
Spindle?
Well, I would agree. It does rotate per se, but does it the spindle we learned rotates the disc? This
Okay,
was
the
the
actuator arm.
okay. that would be, I would agree, connected to the actuator arm, which is this big guy. But we said this is equivalent to your elbow, so that was the actuator something.
Axis?
Thank you. So that was the actuator axis, right? And we just heard this is the arm. So who's this silver device out here?
Platter?
Thank you. And then I guess we did mention the name a little earlier. This guy must be the spindle where
Spindle.
the disc spins. On the tip of the arm, what's here? On the tip of the arms, the little fingers, what's there?
Magneticate.
The head.
That
The
is
reader?
correct. The
Oh,
heads, the head, which is it's all the same thing. You are correct. It reads and writes magnetically the information onto there, the head. Questions, doubts, except for on my drawings, which is always horrible. All right. If we can get some help from Muhaba, please.
Hard disk drive rotation speeds and size. Spindle or rotational speed is measured in revolutions per minute, RPM. The faster the spindle speed, the faster the controller can store and receive data. Hard disk drive common speeds, 5400 RPM, 7200 RPM, 10,000 RPM, and 15,000 RPM.
Thank you. I also see here the different sizes. We have the ones that usually on the laptops are the 2.5s. Then you have your desktops, which are your 3.5 drives. Lastly, you have the ones which are more economic versions of these drives are the 1.8. Be careful with these low-end laptops when you're replacing the actual drive that you actually buy the right size drives. As for the RPMs, obviously the faster the RPM, the faster the drive can retrieve and write the actual information. Thank you very much, Muhammad. Any questions or concerns on the actual HDD, the rotations and or sizes?
Um, yeah, so they are different sizes and
Mhm.
everything, but would you be able to put, let's say, a 1.8 size into, like, let's say, a desktop?
I believe you would not. Those have a ribbon with a special connector that's not IDE. It's a special one for the actual laptops. It's not the regular IDE port that you have on your actual computer.
Curious, Natalia, why would you want to do that?
Well,
Just for
no,
Now,
fun?
well, no,
rephrase
because
that. You can per se. You are correct. You wouldn't do that. There is a shell that you can put on these devices, and sometimes they even have a little thing that attaches to the back so you can put the actual IDE to the drive and obviously make a backup of the information because it doesn't want to boot. Is there a capability of doing it? Yes. Their way, yes. But
I have one
usually you wouldn't do
question.
that. Mhm.
Don't they have one that's compatible for both the 2.5 and 3.5? I know about that, but not the 1.8.
Have
Yes, there
an
is some of them.
adapter piece that you can put a 2.5 in into a 3.5 so it'll fit into a desktop.
Usually they'll sell you this little cage that you could put it into per se. Sometimes this cage that you can put it into, it will even connect through USB to your computer, depending on the actual little cage device that you have. You still have to put a Molex connector, most likely if it's internal, that's going to go in. But is there a way to get it in there? Yes. Would you use that usually for a computer? No, I wouldn't use. Remember, because the ones that are for laptops are usually, since it's smaller, it's less space because of the current technology compared to a regular size hard drive. You will get more bang for your buck now that we're talking about HDDs, because obviously your solid state drives and your the eMMCs take that off the table. We're talking about physical HDD drives, which require a disk. The smaller it is, the smaller the drive in amount of capacity, speed, everything. Questions, doubts on an HDD? Next is the SSD, which everyone loves. The performance is great, as fast as memory. Obviously, in this case, though, is non-volatile. I do not lose the information. Less susceptible to drops. So usually now, when Lázaro drops his computer, we don't have that many problems. Obviously, there is less latency because of the fact that I said it performs like a memory chip. It is flash, just like the word, right? More expensive. Buku bucks if you want to get an SSD with 4 terabytes nowadays is not cheap. Compared to if I go get myself a 4 terabyte hard drive, it's much cheaper. It's slower, obviously. If Lázaro drops it, we usually lose it. Questions or doubts on an SSD? Okay. Your actual types that you have available out there is your flash or your thumb drives. People call them jump drives. They're all the same thing, right? They're usually hot swappable without a problem. The old ones, no. Sometimes if you didn't go into the software itself, it was really you. Windows is your culprit here because never really had that issue with Apple or Linux. Didn't matter what version I had. That if I actually disconnected, I'd lose the data. As for your ice cream truck is here. We'll continue in about 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
I want Ben and Jerry's.
Pause the recording, please. To the recording, please. Thank you. As for the drives that we have here, we have the thumb drives, as we said here for the flash drives. We have the compact flash, the ones which is the ones are like much smaller that fit in a little PCMCI little slots in the old days. At the same time, it usually went into a slot per se. You have also the new ones, which is the cards, the CD SD cards themselves, which allowed you to put inside the cameras and various other devices. You have the micro SD, mini SD, the XDs that usually fit into that area. Any questions on the flash drives, compact flash, or the secure disk SDs?
The flash drive, the compact flash drive, is that like this thing?
That looks like a dongle,
A
Nicole.
dongle? Okay.
Mm-hmm. And it may be for Bluetooth or for wireless, one of those. You will let me know. What are you using it for?
The mouse.
Okay, so
Okay,
it
it's a
allows your
Bluetooth,
mouse to be Bluetooth. Mhm.
So that wouldn't be the compact flash.
No,
No, but I can get you an image of one. Let me see if you
Okay.
can see this.
while
Can
he
you
while
can you
he's
see
doing
this
that,
one?
yeah. I worked in cameras, and those used to be sold with the Nikon and the Canons, digital cameras. It was a compact flash. We would try to sell the high end one because it was faster. But yeah, that's it.
Got it. Okay.
You can see it?
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is usually, and then there's a reader that you can attach to your computer that you could actually easily transfer the data compared to having to connect via USB and then try to transfer the data. Good question. Thank you. Now that I just closed the window I wasn't supposed to close. Yeah, most likely I did. No, thank the Lord Jesus. All right, questions, doubts. Back to our regular program. Next is the actual HHDs, which you have the solid state ones, sorry, your HDs, which are the solid state ones that are available out there. You have the SATA interfaces and the PCIe, even SCSI SSD drives. Anyone want to tell me what a difference between a SATA connector and a PATA connector?
PATA is like the old school, I believe. That's what I.
And what does
It's old
PATA
school.
stand for?
I forget what PATA stands for.
Parallel, okay. And the other one is SATA, which is serial.
Serial advanced technology attachment.
Okay. What's the main difference between a parallel connection and a serial connection?
One of them can only go both at the same time, or one can. I meant what at both at the same time, or only one at a time.
That is
transfer.
correct. The word serial means in order, one, right? More or less in sequential order. You could always think about it. Once again, me remembering things. Parallel, just like parallel lines are all right next to each other, just think about it like that. Data always transmit in parallel. Be that it's going either this way or that way, whatever, but it will send all data's lines, all of the 80 or 40 on that PATA will be transmitting at the same time or receiving. Questions, doubts on the connectors of the SSD. And then the last one, as I stated, was the embedded multimedia, sorry, controller. Somebody said that like 5 times to me and I kept on saying it was something else. I always think it's a memory something or other. But it is memory, obviously. It's flash memory itself. You'll see that they look like little chips, which are used inside the actual smartphones, and they're embedded usually on the board itself, common with SDs and SSDs. Here we are of the compact flash and secure digital drives. As you see here, you have the mini SDs, all these horrible ones. You could tell that the compact flash, which although the name says compact, is the real old one and it's the biggest out of all. Kind of cute name, which they really killed it, didn't they? Now, do you need to memorize these sizes? Should you be able to recognize this?
Probably, I'm assuming.
Correct me if I'm wrong, this isn't on the exam objectives. It may even show up as one of your performance-based questions where they may just throw the pictures at you and ask you to actually recognize some of these cards. It's not going to be one of these things that is going to be a lot of these questions. So therefore, tidbit, once again, try to just get the ones that you can recognize. Don't waste your time. It's only one question or two, right? I doubt they go into two. So I don't waste my time on that. I learn more or less which ones are the ones that I usually use, which I can recognize this one, the mini, and I think is this one is the SD. Yeah, the SD. But once again, it's a useless tidbits. Do you all agree? You're not, has anybody seen a compact flash nowadays on a camera? Please raise your hand.
I got a real old one.
I got one for my Switch.
Oh,
I have one.
Seen one on a
For your
printer.
Switch, you're right, huh? See, look at that. Nintendo using old technology again. Nice. That's cute of them. But yeah, as you can see, these here are the micro SDs. I believe you guys seen these inside your phones, right? So those are things that you could
GoPro.
recognize. Yeah, there you go. And the GoPros has those. Questions, doubts?
I'm
I have a
confused.
question.
Mm-hmm.
Arthur, you first?
No, you can go ahead. Okay.
Okay. What's the difference between micro SD and micro SDHC? Because they look the same.
No,
The
I have the same
size.
question.
The size.
I mean the 1 second on top row.
This one here?
Yeah.
That I'm aware of the size.
So, okay.
I don't think they're the same size. They're completely.
Well,
I
they
think
look
she's talking about
similar to me.
the third and fifth one, the
This
SD
one
and
and
the
this one, no.
SDHC.
HC means
High compact, isn't it?
yeah, it's high
Yeah.
capacity,
High capacity, sorry.
more bigger storage. That's all.
Either which way, if you put this in one of these devices that I'm aware of, if it's not able to read it, it's not going to read it. It shouldn't fit. I don't think it would fit, but I could be wrong. Once again, I don't play too much with these cameras too much. Usually I buy what it says that it's supposed to be using. But they do look a lot like, I would have to agree.
Okay, thanks. Just
Just
yeah,
don't do
for
what I
visit.
do.
Because
And I
look at
love
this. This one and this one look the same too, look. If you really get into that, they
Yeah,
look
they
the
are the
same too.
same. It's just that one that right there that you're on, the 4 gig is high.
So it's
The
still
high
the same
capacity.
thing.
Still the same.
It's the same card.
It's like a
It's
pro
just letting you
version.
know that it's a bigger version
Bigger.
in
There you
size.
go.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Hey, look at that. We all learn. As I said, I never wasted my time on this one. I was like, nah, you ain't getting me. That's too much time to memorize that. Questions? You'll notice though, all devices that are reader, they'll let you know exactly what cards they can read or not read. You have your SIMs, your micro SDs here, SDs, and your MSXDs, CF, all different types. Depending on what type of reader and or flash memory you have available to you, you get that type of reader that you require. A lot of these computers already have that inside. You don't need that. So depending, obviously, and I don't think a lot of the laptops have all the ports, but there's a lot of computers now that come with the ports in the front to allow you to actually read. Here's an example of other ones here. You'll see the SSD drive, what it looks like inside compared to with the shell on top of it. You'll also see here the PCIe slot ones, which is basically this goes directly into the motherboard itself, and there goes your drive. And lastly, over here, the ones that go into the actual slots, like almost like a memory slot. I've seen that a lot on the high-end servers out there where they'll have these little memory chips inside. SSD drives for you. All right. Shiloh, help me out here.
Hybrid hard drives. Traditional, mechanic, and SSD combined. Dual drive hybrid contain both types of drives in the same machine with performance optimized by placing frequently used information on the SSD and less frequently used information on the mechanical drive. Solid state hybrid includes solid state flash memory in a traditional hard drive in a single storage device. Data most related to performance for the computer is started in the flash memory, resulting in an improved performance.
Thank you. Questions? Doubts?
Are these two different kinds of hybrid drives, or is it like different description?
Because this one has the actual, the dual one you're saying, and the one on the bottom? Is that what you're saying? Because this one here on the top is a physical hard drive with an SSD. This has
Okay,
an extra flash memory with the SSD. So you'll use just like you used the hard drive for the long-term stuff, right? And on the top one, and you'll use the SSD for the performance part of it. The bottom one now is gonna shift it around on you. It's gonna use the compact flash information per se, or that they say there, that little extra flash memory as the actual one to be able to do the performance, and then the SSD to be able to hold the actual long term. So that
okay.
one's
So the
much
second
more
one,
expensive.
doesn't have a hard drive at all. The mechanical.
It doesn't
one.
have a moving mechanical hard drive at all. I
Okay.
would have to agree with you
Okay.
with that.
Thank you.
Sorry, I seen a typo. It said it's supposed to be stored in the flash memory.
That I'm aware of, yes. Why?
Yeah, no, when I was reading,
Oh.
yeah, I see it there. Data is most related to performance
Mhm.
for computer. Oh, okay.
If it's a typo, most likely it was me.
It's okay. As long as we debate it and make sure we get it right. Lastly, here is our tape drives. These are the ones that I alluded to earlier that are connected to your actual servers usually for long-term storage itself. It is sequentially stored on the tape itself. Performance is pretty darn slow. On top of it, it makes it kind of tedious when you're doing these incremental backups to figure out. Luckily, the software tells you exactly which tape, and if you labeled your tapes correctly, you'll find exactly the tape you're looking for. Otherwise, you just go and play with the tapes until you find the right one. The primary use, obviously, only to archive data. You're not going to be running an operating system on this. All usual tape drives are going to be either SATA, PATA, or SCSI. SCSI is usually the best ones that are out there. And in external drives, you can be connected with USB or the FireWire nowadays and eSATA. Any questions on a tape drive? Now, I believe I pass it off to, is it you, Marvin?
It's me at four corners. I think there's like one or two more. I think we have to talk about the external
Oh,
SATA.
okay, still me? Oh,
Still
sure,
you, yes,
blame it
sir.
on me. All right. All right, how to connect the drives in a PC overall. If you can help me out, Fadil.
Sure. How to connect drives in a PC. Every drive has an interface that allows the drive to exchange data with the motherboard. The connection can be internal inside the computer or external outside of the computer. Each interface has its own connectors.
Okay, anybody, thank you very much, Fadil. Anyone know what is the interface that we mentioned, which is IDE, what's its connector? Okie dokie. So internal, you have your IDE or PATA, and you have your SATA, right? And SCSI connectors. You have your external ones, which is your eSATAs, your USBs, your FireWires, and believe it or not, Ethernet storage. There is NAS. There's also the FireWire. Anyone recognize who he is? FireWire? No Nintendo freaks? Nobody ever played with the little Game Boy and it had FireWire? Nobody?
I
Dated yourself.
remember. I played a
Dated
lot of
yourself.
Advanced Wars on that.
I still have a couple hard drives that are FireWire.
1394.
Yeah, that's his number, right? 1394. As for the IDE or PATA, those are the usual ones that you'll see on those hard drives. You have your SATA connectors, which is a little faster, and then SCSI, which is the ones usually inside your actual hard drives. So your IDE is the integrated devices electronics. Fancy word. Still a PATA connector, which is a parallel advanced technology attachment. Usually it has either 40 or 80 wires in it, which is called on a ribbon itself. The maximum length, which is 18 inches. All PATA drives use a Molex power connector. Anybody know what a Molex power connector is? And no, it's not the thing here, back here in your throat. No, it's the Molex connector. Anyone? A
No, it
Molex?
has 4 pins, I think.
Yeah, it has 4. Is the one that is like a D-shaped white with 4, and it has yellow, black, red wires coming. Anyone? No? Only Benjamin. Okay. Thank you, Benjamin. Overall, that is the guy that's giving you the power. It usually provides speeds up to 133 megabytes per second. The connection interface going into the motherboard itself, right? Two IDE drives can be connected in a single ATA controller with the jumpers that are correct. You could be able to put one as a master, the other one as a slave. And don't ask me, this is just people and names that they come up with. Either which way, they act as one. ATA3 is introduced a self-monitoring and reporting technology, or SMART, to track errors and conditions to the drive itself. These connect in many different drives, which you notice is the CD-ROMs that are out there. You have your zip drives, your DVD ROMs, sorry, your DVD drives, and your hard drives themselves. Anyone know what a zip drive is?
It's a thing that you can download off. It's a way of you can download it off the internet, and it contains more things than it can. It compresses stuff.
That would be a zip file. I would completely agree with you. As for a zip drive, that is a type of backup drive. It is actually a vendor that's out there which creates these zip drives. And here's a picture of a zip drive. You put your little tapes in and you're able to store information. Usually it's an external drive that you can connect either with IDE, PATA, uh, whichever it is, or parallel, depending if it's internal, external, USB. It has a plethora of different types and or models. That's your zip drives. Not to be confused with a floppy drive. A floppy drive is completely different, although this is considered a floppy kind of drive, but it is not a 5.25 and or a 1.44. This is a much more space, and it's a different type of floppy. Questions, doubts?
What are these used for? Are they like interchangeable with external drives?
You can use them for backup. It's a cheap solution for a backup drive. The zip drives are much more cheaper than the expensive tape drives that are out there. Usually, they're very good for backups of computers and stuff like that. You could use it to travel with them because it's easy to travel with them and it's cheaper. But usually nowadays with the network backups and or if you're going to be traveling and you're installing in another computer, usually in the new computer you're just going to transfer directly. So backup is
Thanks.
itself. Any other questions on this slide? Your IDE itself, you'll notice in the back it has several jumpers. Depending on the jumper you select, you can select if it's a master, if it's a slave, if it is limiting the size. Why would I want to limit the size to be less than 2 gigabytes on a drive?
To add additional storage.
The only capacity, if I limit that, it will limit the drive to apparently 2 gigabytes. Why would I want to limit it to exactly 2 gigabytes? Why even use that? Clue, I would say, is operating system. How much storage can or how much can a drive actually create? And some of these operating systems can only go up to 2 gigs. Therefore, if you give it a drive that's too big, it won't recognize it. Limiting its size to exactly 2 gig, now you're talking, I can format you. Make sense? The 32-bit operating systems we learned only can do up to 2 gigs, if I remember correctly. But we'll get into that. You have to know that for 1002. But I'm just letting you know where you can do it so that you don't go and buy yourself another drive. A lot of these IDEs came up with that idea of doing that. That wasn't there before. Obviously, that's when we got into the new operating systems, they created that extra jumper. You have your 40 wire down here and your 80 wire. Usually the 80 wire is the one that connects directly to the motherboard. Then in the middle between this guy and the other one, there'll be another connector of 40. So you connect this all the way top to the slave, then the one that's in the middle, sorry, top one to the master, then the one that's in the middle to the slave, and then this bottom blue one to the actual motherboard itself. As I stated, depending on the actual jumper that you select, and then it becomes either a master or a slave. It will combine them, the two of them, to make into one. Questions? Doubts? Okay. Your SATA connect, your SATA connectors here. Robert, help me out.
The ATA drives using serial transmission as opposed to parallel creates a point-to-point connection between the SATA device and the SATA controller. The host bus adapter HBA connects one device to motherboard, connect more than one. Cable smaller than the ribbon, PATA, cable 7 wires, maximum cable length of 40 inches or 1 meter, allows hot swapping. It has 3 revision, SATA 1, SATA 2, and SATA 3, SATA Express or SATA 3.2 drives directly into the PCIe. It requires a motherboard with SATA E support.
Thank you. As we see, both are ATA connectors. One's SATA, which is a new one, and the other one's PATA. The only difference is that one's parallel versus the other one's serial. This one has only 7 wires, while the other one has that 40-80 wire combination on that ribbon. Any questions on the connector itself? We'll see the pictures soon. Overall, the standards you'll see here is the main variance is that obviously it doubles in every single technology. You'll see 1.5, then 3, double that is 6. Yes, I just said that. 1.5, 3, and 6. Easy to remember for standards is that obviously you have the 1s, your 2s, and 3s on generations. The name coincides very cutely with a speed, by the way. Question? Doubts? Obviously, when we're purchasing these devices, we need to make sure that our motherboard is capable to either use a SATA, a PATA, or any of these different variations of speeds, because if we buy the wrong device, we just threw our money out the door. As we can see, Humpty Dumpty cannot be put together back again if you do not have the correct L shape here. If I have an IDE device, you can see the Molex connector and or power connector they have available for this one here, just in case if you don't have that type of power connector. Questions? This is a power connection that goes here, right? And then they also have the connector, which is this guy here, your SATA connector, which goes there. Here's your SATA power connector. This guy here. It's confusing because they make all these lines going everywhere. I want to make sure you guys know because this is like worse than one of those mazes. Questions, doubts? All right. Next, we have our SCSI connector, which is equivalent to small computer system interface standard used by servers. Supports 7 or 15 devices. I said 7 or 15, depending on the standard. Obviously, the capabilities of the motherboard. Provides better performance than your ATA standards, which is we learned is the IDE or PATA and your SATA. You'll notice that there is different interfaces of your SCSI here. You'll probably recognize this one here. The SCSI controller looks just like the ones that are in the back of your Centronics printers. Questions, doubts? eSATA is an external SATA connector. Obviously, usually outside for part of the expansion bus, most likely. If it's not on a riser card itself, it'll probably be just on the actual slots that you see in the back. Has usually a 7-pin, just like the ones that are inside. Does have a different shape than the internal one to ensure that you don't go mess things up. All-in-one connector versus the other one has questions, doubts. So, Arturo, what's number one?
No, it's my turn.
Oh, sorry.
God.
Oh my God.
Way to step on my toes, Diego. Hi, people. It's Arturo. No, Arturo. No. That's not
But
how
he
the
called on
game
me first,
goes.
though.
I may, but I won't now because I feel like you know the answer. So I'm not gonna call you. So mute your mic, sir. So right now we have an opportunity to identify some drives, and I will be helming this part of the session. So Arturo, unmute your mic. Choose one of your classmates, sir, to answer this question.
All right. Let's see. I'm trying to pick on Mike. I'm gonna pick on Michael.
That was easy. This Mike always get picked on. But go ahead, Mike. Unmute your mic. What's number one, sir?
Number one, solid state drive.
Okay. Extra credit. How long do you think solid state drives have been in existence?
Past few years.
Yeah, I mean, that's what most would think. It's been around since the late 80s and became more popular late 90s. But it's been around for a while. Toshiba started it and it was expensive, but it's been around since the late 80s. And you're right, that is a solid state drive. Mike, since you answered, pick another one of your classmates to answer number two.
All right. Let's go with Ayana.
Hey,
I knew that
man,
was
y'all,
coming. Optical
yeah.
drive.
Okay, look at the symbol on there,
It's
Ayana.
Blu-ray.
It's
a
Blu-ray. Oh,
yeah, but isn't that
look
an
at
optical drive?
it is an optical drive. That's what I want you to know.
Oh,
But I want for extra credit, you did say Blu-ray.
Oh.
For some more extra credit,
Oh man.
if you had a blank Blu-ray, you wanted to burn a movie on it. What's the capacity of that blank Blu-ray?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
Some gigabytes, I think.
It is some gigabytes. It is some gigabytes. It's a nice round number. Anybody can. Okay, Fadil. All right. Ayana, you're off the clock. Fadil, unmute your mic, sir. Say it out loud.
I think it is 25 GB.
It is 25 gigabytes for the first line, but you know it goes to single layer, it goes to double layer, it goes to dual layer, so it can go from 25 all the way up to 100 gigs on one Blu-ray if it had the capacity and that technology. Now, Fidel, you're going to pick the next person. How many DVDs? You're going to answer this one too, Fidel, but you're going to pick the next person as well. How many DVDs can be held in one Blu-ray? that will require you to know the size of a DVD, but I think you got it.
Is that for me?
Yeah, that's for you. How many blank DVDs can be held or recorded onto that 25 gigabyte Blu-ray?
At once or?
What the size? I want to. What is one Blu-ray in equivalent to in DVD terms?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure. Okay, pass it on. I see Josh just got off mute.
I was just thinking 4, maybe 4 discs. I don't know.
All right, Fidel, you can mute. Josh, you're so close. Go up one more.
5.
4.7 gigabytes is what a blank DVD is. 5 of those is what a Blu-ray will hold. Let's go even. Let's take it back to CDs. What's the size of a CD?
128 megabytes.
More.
It is our 700.
700 megabytes. I recall New Music Friday. And when the new music came out, I was one of the guys that had the DVD burner. So we all didn't have to buy that. Let me stop. Josh, pick someone else to answer number 3.
Okay, I will pick. Let's see here. Muhaba.
Muhaba.
Okay. Number 3, it's a hard disk drive.
And what's the difference between the hard disk drive and your SSD?
The SSD, it doesn't have moving parts in it.
Thank you, Muhaba. Okay, I took some time to grab some things. This right here, put it up against me, is a, you guys can see it. I'm trying to get it in the
Hard
light.
disk drive? Is that what
It's
that
a
is?
hard drive, yeah.
It is a hard disk drive, and it is 2,000 gigabytes. So what's the other name for 2,000 gigabytes?
2 terabytes.
2 terabytes. Thank you, Rob. And this guy right here is my solid state drive. Anybody want to guess how much is on here?
1 terabyte.
No, it's 500. I wish, Robert.
It looks
And
like a battery.
Look at the size of it, man. Look at how small. Look how small it is. And yeah, so it's hard for me to. Yeah, there you go, Marvin. Look how small it is. So it takes 4 of these to equate to one of these. But I just wanted to bring it out for sure and tell. We can go to the next slide. And who answered last? Rob. Rob, pick one of your classmates to answer number 1 for me. These are interfaces.
Walk-ins.
Walk.
Is that a IDE?
Ooh, close. But IDE is so big. It's the 40 pin. It's the big one. What's the small one called? The one we use a lot.
SATA.
There you go. It's SATA. It's the small one. More commonly seen now than ever, and more ideal cable. Walk, pick somebody to answer 2.
I'll go Benjamin.
You muted, Walt. You just how you gonna mute yourself?
Number 2.
Oh, I said Benjamin. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he said Benjamin.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Walt.
Is that SATA drive?
I kind of gave it away, but what's that interface called? What is that cable called? What is that called?
Oh, I know it's a ribbon for sure.
I mean, Walt gave you the answer. What's the acronym? Say it.
I don't even remember what he said.
Walt, answer your question again. What'd you call it?
I said IDE.
IDE. There you go. IDE. Ben, you gonna redeem yourself on number 3?
Probably not. I don't know.
Okay.
We'll see.
Okay. The more expensive one, Diego mentioned that it was used on printers. Has a cool name that doesn't sound how it's acronymed.
SCSI?
SCSI, man. There you go. SCSI. I gave it to you. Okay. All right. Good job. Pass it on. I'm ready to go to the next one, sir. All right. So this one should be a lot easier now since we kind of hammered it home a little more. So Ben, you got to pass it to the next classmate.
Natalia.
Okay, so number 1, I think it's SATA or ID, that long one. But I'm not sure.
You are correct. Let's pass it on, Natalia.
I will pass it to Anne.
Miss Anne.
I don't know. I'm thinking.
Okay. Pass it on. If you don't feel comfortable answering, we got somebody in here that knows
it. Diego?
That's a great pass.
That was awesome pass. Yeah, there you go.
Arturo, sorry.
Back to you, Arturo.
You said number 2, right?
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna say
it's already been answered once before. It's just now you just tell me what the connector is.
One was a male and the other one's a female. So this is the female version of a male that you might have seen before.
Walt made it popular.
IDE.
There you go. Thank you, sir.
All right. Okay.
Last one. Last but not least, number 3, and I'm going to pick Nicole. Number 3. One of the last things that Diego talked about could be found. I don't want to give you too much.
Is it PATA?
It's outside. It's found outside of the computer.
Oh, I don't know.
Okay. So outside being E. So what do we have? Anybody can share out that we have that's a connector that's outside.
eSATA?
eSATA.
eSATA. There you go. There you go. And that was the last one, I think. And it's time for me to allow our illustrious professor to talk about some RAID. And thank you all for participating.
Thank you. All right. You guys still can see my screen? Hopefully I didn't hit the wrong button there. Back to our previous program. RAID. Redundant array of independent disks overall is a new technology that came out to allow to combine several disks into one single unit. The main purpose is obviously either for data redundancy and or performance itself. Sometimes they do create both redundancy and performance. If you have one drive that fails, some of these RAIDs allow for that failure to be taken up by the actual other drives. Usually within servers, to provide extra redundancy to sensible data, be that you do have your tape drives already backing up the information. At the same time, if you can have that redundancy in the fly, it would be great. The data usually is distributed across the drives in one or several ways, depending on the type of RAID levels that you use. You have your zeros, RAID 1, RAID 5, you have your RAID 10, you have your RAID 0 plus 1 or 0 plus 1 and 1 plus 0. And you also have RAID 6, but for the case of A plus, apparently RAID 6 is not being looked upon. The ones that you do need to know is 0, 1, 5, 0, 1, and 0, 5. Now, as for zero, zero means that zero redundancy. All it's going to give you is performance based on what they consider striping. So basically, what it's going to do is going to put Humpty Dumpty and break them up into little pieces across the disk array. You do require at least 2 disks to be able to create a RAID in a RAID 0. If I have 5 RAID disks on a RAID 0, you could see that it's going to be much faster performing application because there's going to be 5 different drives that are actually doing the writing and reading compared to only one drive trying to look through all that data and writing and reading. The performance will be much slow. This is only for the purpose of performance. You wouldn't want to use this if you really have very sensitive data that you required redundancy. The first one that does require or does sorry give you redundancy would be a RAID 1. RAID 1 has one tolerance and it has one copy identical to the other. You need at least 2 drives. The key thing in reference to one RAID 1, it must be incremented in what we call even pairs. Since I said you do lose half of the data, it requires half of the drives to be able to do that. So you have, in this case, 2, 4, 6, and or whatever you want. As I stated a moment ago, RAID 0 requires only 2 drives. At the same time, I can increment at any rate that I want, be by 1, 2, 3, whatever I want to put across that RAID 0, I can. Any questions on a RAID 0 or a RAID 1? We have Masters of Raid. Interesting. Okay. Here we are. Raid 5. It is using the striping set just like we saw in what we saw in Raid 0, right? Variance is that using the technology of distributing a actual parity bit. Anyone remember what the parity bit is?
Yes, it's a bit that can detect errors but not correct them at the end of a string of 8 ones and zeros.
That is true for memory itself. I would have to agree with you when it comes to memory. In this one here, though, you'll notice that what's interesting about this is it is able to recover as long as you only fail one drive. The minimum drives that you require in this is 3. So what it's going to do, instead of actually in RAID 1, we're losing a whole entire drive to make an exact copy of everything. In this case, all he does is add to the last drive. In this case, you'll see here he's writing file A. So he'll write the first 4 parts of it, or a nibble, and he writes a parity bit based on whatever was written of zeros and ones. Do you agree that if I lose this second drive with this parity bit, I can actually recreate what was on the drive? Yes, no, maybe so.
Yes.
As long as I do not lose one drive, the statement will hold true because of the fact that if I have a 1 here, a 1 here, a 0 here, a 1 here, and my parity bit is a 1, if I lose this drive when I add, do you agree that I have 1, 0, 1, and then I have a 1 here? That means that this must be a 1 to be even. Otherwise, I'll wind up with 3, right? 1, 2, 3. So it's able to reconstruct the data that's on that drive missing, that whole drive that you missed. Because it doesn't put Humpty Dumpty all in one drive, as long as you don't lose more than one drive, it will recover. Obviously, there is a time for it to recover. It's going to be performing much slower while it's trying to recover the data. Fair warning, you don't want to wait too long to replace the disk because obviously if one died, there might be an issue with the rest of them.
I have a question.
Hmm.
What if you lose the parity drive?
There is no parity drive. There's a parity bit that's always striped across, so he rotates where the bit's gonna fall. If you'll notice on file B, he puts his parity bit on the fourth drive.
I got you.
On file C, he puts the parity bit on the third drive.
But even so, if you had all your parity bits in the same silo,
You
and
still
you
got the
lost that
data, don't
parity
you?
bit, you would still have all your data.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
look at it. If I lost this, I still have my original data, so I don't even need to do any parity. Make clear? Any questions other?
Um, how do you lose a drive? Like, what makes it fail?
Time, use, usually that's electrical. If you have a
Abused,
power surge,
pumped.
no maintenance on the drives. Somebody doesn't maintain the drives and make sure that everything is up to par on them. But time is of the essence. Like any other equipment, the more you use it, the more common. And especially with these power surges here in Florida, and or electrical storms, that'll cause problems if you don't have the correct equipment protecting it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So that was RAID 5. As for RAID 0+1 or 1+0, there a lot of people get these two confused. So the only thing I can tell you is just remember the order of the name. 0+1 is the one that starts with it in the inside, striping, and then it mirrors across the RAID to the other side. So you'll see that this copy of the stripe information is identical copy is over here versus a 1+0 does its mirroring inside and it stripes across. So you'll see that A1, A1, A3, A3, 5, A5, A7, A7. But when he stripes from the outside, he throws the 1 over here, then he throws 2 over here, 3 over there, 4 over here, and then the internal RAID actually makes the duplicate of the information. Requires 4 disks minimum. And it allows now for half, I said it, half redundancy. As long as it's not the same pair that has the same exact information. Both of them allow up to 2 as long as it's not the exact same data of redundancy. We agree? Anyone?
Can you just explain that again, please?
Yeah.
Thank
The whole thing or just the redundancy part?
Just the redundancy part.
Okay. We'll see here that in this case, if I lose this drive, A1, A3, A5, and A7 are gone, correct? Now there's an identical copy over here. As long as this drive does not go down, if it's this one or this one goes down, I'm fine because then there's another identical copy on the other side. That is a dangerous if statement. So when anybody tells you, yes, there is redundancy of 2 or half, sorry, because if you have 6, there's 3. Either which way, here, you can notice that either which way, you can only lose so much before you actually are down. It could be that the second drive had the exact same mirror information as the other, and unfortunately, you're down. Make sense? Hopefully now. So worst case scenario that all the ones that do have the duplicate go down. As long as it's not the same one with the duplicate information, you're fine. Questions? Doubts? All right, we'll get a little chart here. Hopefully helps us out. RAID 0, as we said, has 0 failures. So as soon as I lose a drive, I'm dead in the water. Minimum that I have requirements is 2. Once again, RAID 0 is for performance more than anything else. You would agree that this would probably be a RAID 0 will most likely be on the part of a, let's say, a gaming server, on the part where the actual hosting of what's going on right now. So we're all inside the Battlefront forum. We all come in. Your computer has what you would say the actual application installed. But when you go and connect to this server, it most likely would have wherever that is running on a RAID 0. Because of the fact that I can care less where you were a nanosecond ago. If you move from one side of the board to the other, I do not need any type of redundancy for this. You agree? All I want is to go zoom, zoom, zoom from one side of the board to the other. If I'm getting killed by performance because of RAID 1, RAID 5, RAID 10, or 0+1, I don't need that. That's not necessary. I may need it for the actual application that's hosting that. So that part of the operating system and everything, maybe I'll put RAID 5 on that. But as for where this is being hosted, that RAID or that section of the RAID for that server would probably be a RAID 0 because it doesn't matter the moment that that game's finished. I can care less about the data. I don't need redundancy. Matter of fact, guys, it doesn't matter even if the game's not finished. You just moved. You made a shot. Whatever happened a couple of seconds ago, I don't care about that. I don't need a copy. Questions, doubts? Next is the RAID 5. Minimum, again, 3 drives. This is the ones that starts killing people. You only have 1. Same thing with RAID 1, which is a identical copy. We said it has to be in even pairs. This one also kills people. They don't remember with this one. Lastly, we have here the actual RAID 0+1 and the 1+0, which gives you minimum of 4 drives, and you have two failures that are allowed as long as it's not the same exact data. And my friends, that was the ice cream truck for those that just heard him pass by. We will pause here the recording and continue at 3 p.m. Eastern. RAID. For RAID itself, as I stated earlier, there is the hardware RAID and the software RAID. Overall, the RAID that is hardware itself contains all function within the actual controller or the actual circuit board. It is completely hot swappable. These are the ones that are on your high-end servers, which have a RAID controller built inside, compared to the software RAID, which is a cheaper version of RAID itself. Obviously, the OS in that point will control your actual RAID. Your disks themselves have to be, the formats and all that stuff have to be the same size to be able to do your actual RAID. You can't go and create a whole bunch of different size of partitions to be able to create these RAIDs. So be very careful. They're all usually the exact same size, as long as they're on the same RAID. Any questions on a hardware base versus a software base OS? If you'll notice, the Windows 7 and 8 only has capability of 0 or 1. Your RAID 1 and 5 is available in the Windows 8.1 and 10. Questions? Concerns? Well, Marvin, we have a whole bunch of RAID professionals here, Pops. I don't know what to tell you. They're starting to
Hey,
scare me.
these new ones, man, they're unbelievable.
All right. This is still me, correct, guys? Correct me when I stop here. Sometimes I don't want to go and step on Marvin's foot again here. But factors to consider overall when you're purchasing a drive is obviously the capacity of its drive, the actual spindle speed, the interface that you're dealing with, with, and or the cache or buffer size of the drive. That is all depending on the actual motherboard too and what it is capable of handling. Those all intertwined with the operating system that you're working with would be another thing that you would consider for size. Any questions on what capacity of the drive is, your actual spindle speed, your interface, which hopefully you recognize those by now, and or the cache or buffer size? Is this on? Anybody? Microphone on?
I can hear you.
Everybody went to sleep. They ate too much. That's what happened.
I was
I'm
about to
telling
say
you this.
that.
Woo! I can hear a pin drop in here. All right. Here we go. I think I might stop here. I'm not sure. Am I stopping here? Somebody help me.
You are.
Yes,
No?
this is where
All
I
right.
take over.
Thank you.
Alrighty, so we're going to be looking now at how to install a drive. So, because my food coma is somewhat setting in, I'm going to need a little help here. Let's go ahead and ask, who should I ask? Benjamin, help me out here, please.
All right. Steps to install a drive. 1, shut down the computer and unplug it. Then press the power button for 3 seconds to drain the residual power. Remove the computer case cover. 2, decide which bay will hold the drive. Examine the locations for the drive bays and the length of data cables and power cords. 3, for a stationary bay, slide the drive in the bay and using a screwdriver, secure one side of the drive with 1 or 2 screws. Another option is a sliding tab that is used to secure the drive. 4, decide which SATA or IDE connectors on the board to use. 5, connect a 15-pin SATA power connector or a 4-pin Molex power connector from the power supply to the drive. 6, check all your connections, power up the system, and verify.
Thank you so much, Benjamin.
Yep.
So basically, like with any computer, you're going into it, you gotta make sure it's unplugged, the power's been drained, you have your anti-static gloves, mat, etc. You take your jewelry off, all the important steps that you always have to do when you're working inside. After that, you'll end up locating the drive, disconnecting all its cables. Most hard drives either have screws that they get mounted with, anywhere from 1 to, I've seen up to 4 for some of these, or they have a little tab that you'll notice we'll see in the next slide. And then of course you have your SATA IDE connector that you also have to take apart, and then the power supply. Those are very important to make sure when you are putting the new one in that they are connected properly. I believe the power supply, you should be able to feel a click when they put it in. The SATA, you need to make sure it's securely in there. It's always good just to like kind of tug it slightly. So if you feel that resistance, you know it's securely, secure. But onto the next slide, we'll see the 2 examples of the different mounting for the drives. You see on the left, it has the screw to hold it in. And on the right, we have the little tab that's going to actually lock it into place. You're not going to need the screw for that one. But for the most part, I've seen more of the screw mounts than I have the tab mounts, at least in the computers I've worked with. And then on the
Would be
next
definitely
slide,
a true statement. Most of your towers will have your screws. As for the little tabs, those would be your high-end performance ones, and or maybe in servers themselves. It'll be mounted onto rails on the side, and then that little tab on the side will release it to allow you to bring them out. Next slide, you said? Sorry about that. Go ahead.
yes, no worries. The next slide, can we get Joshua? Can you help me out here, buddy?
All right. Troubleshooting hard drives. Slow performance. It is the result of the use, writing, and deleting data of a magnetic hard drive. Solution: Run a defragmentation tool. Problems during boot. If UEFI or BIOS cannot find a hard drive at post, power on self-test, it displays an error message. Solutions. Remove and reattach all drive cables. Inspect the drive for damage, such as bent pins. Determine if a magnetic hard drive is spinning by listening to it. Check the cable for frayed edges or other damage. Check UEFI BIOS setup for errors in the hard drive configuration. Try booting from another bootable media.
Thank you so much, Joshua. So for the slow performance, as the solution mentioned, a lot of the times that can be fixed with just a simple defragmentation. Almost every PC has that already built in. So we'll learn more about this in the 1002, how to do that. But it's just a very simple tool that rearranges the data so it's all clustered more together and not just scattered throughout all the different disks. So it's easier and faster to access it. For the problems during boot, that can be actually a bunch of different things as you see. It could just be simply the hard drive has failed, it's not being recognized, it's not connected properly, or it's just simply the pins are messed up, just plenty of things. So at that point, you maybe also want to test a different hard drive to see if it actually is maybe a connection with the wires or etc. But for the most part, that one's a little bit more difficult to actually narrow down, but it is still solvable. And then I believe after this, I'm passing it back to Diego.
Okay, thank you. As we saw then, overall, this session covered the features and roles of drives and its connectors. Hopefully by now we should be able to describe the purposes, types, and characteristics of them, compare and contrast the various connections, interfaces with the actual drives, the characteristics on what they're used, the zip drive, tape drive, your optical drives, your SSDs and HDDs, your flash drives, and understand where they're being used, explain the purpose and the types of RAIDs that are out there. So we need to be able to identify the variance between your 0, your 1, your 5, your 0 plus 1, and your 1 plus 0. Describe the process for installing your actual storage devices and identify your common pitfalls. We need to obviously understand the main use of these drives are for data storage. It's able to process and hold information. There are multiple types of drives, as we stated. And with this information, that's as far as I go. Is there any questions or concerns? Okay, we can pause or stop actually the recording there, guys. I'm not sure who's in control. And this ends this session.